Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. Today on the podcast, we're talking about something that is so important in work and in life: boundaries. When you're in academia, you are constantly told to do more with less. And I genuinely believe that one of the main reasons people get burned out and eventually start wanting to leave is because we are continually asked to take on more and more work without fair compensation, and often without even basic gratitude or appreciation. One of the hardest things then when we start our own business is unlearning, or maybe relearning, how to set and hold boundaries around our time and our labor. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the kinds of boundaries I think are especially important when you're running a business, particularly when you're just starting out. Because early on, it is very easy to bring those patterns of behavior that we learned in academia into our business. And it's easy to fall into the hustle culture of entrepreneurship that is very widespread out in the world. It's easy to feel like you have to do more and more work, create more and more content on social media, to keep putting more and more out there to be successful. So I'm also going to share some practical tips for how to set those boundaries, how to hold them, and how to communicate them with your clients or with colleagues when it's necessary. To explain why this is so hard for so many of us, I want to start with an experience I remember very clearly from my own time in academia. Let's dive in. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. When I was a professor, I remember people, often with the best intentions, giving me one major piece of advice, which you've probably heard before. You have to learn how to say no. They would tell me this knowing that as new faculty, I would constantly be asked to do more, serve on more committees, do more research projects, do more service, attend more campus events, advise more students, teach more. And the advice was always framed as a way of protecting myself. You have to protect your time. You have to protect your energy. You have to prioritize the things that really matter for getting tenure, things like publishing. But here's the problem. Very often, the people who give you this advice, people like your department chair or your dean, or sometimes even the provost, turn around the very next week and ask you to serve on a new committee or take on a new project. And when someone who is in a position of power, who very likely holds your future and your tenure case in their hands, when they ask you to do something like serve on a committee, they're not really asking you, right? You are being voluntold to do it. There's a tone in their voice that says, I'm phrasing this like a question, but what I really mean is that this is your responsibility and I expect you to do it without complaint. Now, of course, there are expectations in any job. We all have obligations, even things we don't like to do that we still have to do anyway. That's normal. But when those obligations continue to grow, When the workload keeps increasing, there's no increase in compensation. There's no increase in time off. You are not given anything extra to make up for the increase in the workload. When you usually aren't even shown extra appreciation or gratitude for the additional work you're doing, that's when these obligations stop being reasonable. That's when they become abuse. And that's when a workplace becomes toxic. And if you're listening to this, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Most of us have experienced this in one form or another inside higher ed. But what I want to point out about all of this is something a bit deeper. This way of working, this pattern of behavior, of accepting that this is just the way things are, it starts to become normalized in our minds. We accept it as just the way that higher ed works, that we have to do these things and tick these boxes in order to get tenure, in order to get full, to get whatever, to get a raise. Eventually, we are promised we'll eventually get a raise, and it never seems to come around. And I want to be very clear that this type of working environment is not normal. It is certainly not healthy. And I believe it is not something that you should just accept, because no matter how many times your dean or your provost or whoever promises you that you will eventually be rewarded for your sacrifices, those rewards almost never show up. The self-sacrifice that you engage in never serves you. It only serves the institution. And that institution exists above and beyond anything else to bring in tuition dollars. And taking on more and more obligations beyond what's in your contract that you initially agreed to without an increase in compensation is not virtuous behavior. We are sold this idea that because we're in education, we should sacrifice ourselves, we should sacrifice our time with our families, we should sacrifice our health to teach the next generation. The institution is having a hard time. We're short on funds. We need you to do all this extra work because we're shaping the next generation of young minds. It is not virtuous behavior. It is self-sacrifice. It is not something to be applauded. It is exploitation. And it's not something, all this extra work that you're being asked to do is not something that is going to save you when the provost writes you to tell you that your department or program is getting cut and you're out of a job. Sorry. They will take all of your time. They will take all of your energy, and all they're going to do is give an empty apology when the shit hits the fan. But all these years that we spend in academia, they train us to believe that we're part of the family, that we have to take care of each other, that the institution truly needs us. And if you're listening on your podcast, this is the point in the episode. You can't see me, but I am rolling my eyes very dramatically because, of course, none of this is true. But we internalize it, right? We start to believe it because we want to succeed in this career that we have devoted our lives to, that we value. We believe in education. We believe in shaping young minds, but we end up sacrificing ourselves in the process. And all of this, these stories that we're told, they start to become our beliefs, our belief system, the way that we view the world. Now, if you are able to leave academia, whether it's for another career or to start your own business, or if you are starting a side hustle while you're staying in academia, these beliefs and these patterns of overworking are things that you have to actively unlearn. The beliefs don't just disappear when you start a business. They show up quietly and in the background in terms of how much you work and how much you're willing to Sacrifice yourself more, but this time for your clients instead of your institution. And so, something that we talk a lot about in my program, BAE, Becoming an Academic Editor or Coach, is how to set these boundaries, how to prioritize ourselves and our families and whatever it is that's truly important to us, and to not repeat these behaviors and these patterns when we move into running our own business. What I see quite often among people who join my program and other business owners that I know is that these patterns of overwork show up in beliefs about whether or not you are providing a valuable service. They show up in your belief that you have to constantly over deliver and overserve your clients in order for them to appreciate you and keep hiring you. And they also show up in our own perceptions about our value and our worth. And because of everything we've been through in academia, we tie our value and our worth to how much we work and how much we over deliver. And we think that if we work more, we are thus worth more. These patterns also show up in how much, or rather how little, we charge for our services. We think that we have to charge less so that people will want to hire us, or we think that it's ethical to charge less for our work because we're helping a grad student or we're furthering research or science. That topic actually comes up quite a lot, that, is it ethical to charge for editing? Yes, of course it's ethical to charge for editing. It's your time and your knowledge and your labor. These beliefs also show up in how available you feel you have to be for your clients, how you think you need to edit a text again or do an extra round of edits that weren't included in the contract just because the client asks you to. And of course, because we are academics, these beliefs show up in how guilty we feel when we do try to rest or set limits. And I mean, if you've never felt guilty about taking time off, are you even an academic? Guilt is part and parcel of being in academia. So let's talk about a few of the boundaries that I think are the most important for you to set and hold when you're starting your own business, and why setting them early is one of the most important things you can do to help you be successful in the long term. So let's start with boundary number one. And I'm going to give several examples and a few points here, but all of these fall under this category of time. When you are setting up your business, one of the most wonderful things about running your own business is that you get to decide when and where you work. If you are an editor and you don't have any real face time with clients, you're just communicating mainly over email, you get to decide when you want to work. If you're a night owl, you can edit all night long and sleep all day if that works for you. If you're a parent like me, you can work from 8 a.m. until 1 and then go do school pickup, and then know that trying to work in the evenings is not going to happen because you've got kids running around screaming. So you know that you have this block of time from 8 to 1 every day that you can get work done. If you are doing this as a side hustle, and maybe you're working as a coach as a side hustle, and you have to take clients outside of your regular work hours, you know that you can take a certain number of clients a week and you can take those appointments in the evening, and that's what your schedule is going to be. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters is that it works for you, that you set that clear schedule, and that you hold yourself to it. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rule, right? When I'm editing, maybe my kids get sick, and my schedule is to work Monday through Friday basically in the mornings like we just talked about, and not to work weekends. That's important to me. Maybe my kids get sick during the week and they have to stay home for a couple days, and so I have to be flexible, and to get the work done, I have to work on the weekend. That happens. That's life, right? That's not what we're talking about here. There's always exceptions to the rule. What we're talking about is The situation where a client asks you to do something and you feel obligated to do it. Not that you don't, it's not, you don't want to do the work. You feel, oh God, I have to do that just to keep them as a client. Or because if I don't agree to this, they're not going to hire me again. There might also be a scenario where you have a trusted and valued repeat client, and they're the ones who have a family emergency, and maybe their kids get sick, and so they have to get the paper to you a couple of days late, and they let you know and they apologize and they're really doing the best they can, and this gives you less time to work on the text. This is just life, right? In these situations, it is important to be flexible. It is important to be kind and understanding. But you have to also weigh how much you are willing to accommodate the client against your own plans in your life and your own mental health. So, the first boundary to set and hold is your work schedule. When are you going to be available? When are you not going to be available? One quick tip that I can offer here, particularly if you have phone calls or Zoom calls with clients or potential clients, is to create a calendar. I use TidyCal, which is available. You can get a lifetime license through a website called AppSumo. TidyCal is just like Calendly, except you pay, I think it's like $30 for the lifetime license as of this recording. And it works just like Calendly. You tie it to your Google Calendar or whatever you use, and only set your availability to the times that you truly want to be available. So for example, I live in Maine on the East Coast. Like I said, I don't usually work after 1 o'clock in the afternoons. But in order to accommodate people on the West Coast in California and other places, I wanted to have some phone calls, have availability for phone or Zoom calls in the afternoon. So, like, say 3 to 5 p.m. And I would leave those spots available on my calendar. And quite frequently, people would choose those times to have a 15-minute call with me to talk about my program or editing a paper or whatever. And after a while, I realized that I just hated having these calls in the afternoon. It's so hard to juggle kids running around after school, trying to cook dinner and trying to also have a meaningful conversation with a potential client. And so I just cut those calls from my calendar. I block it off. And you know what? If there's somebody who truly cannot meet during the times that I say I'm available, they'll email me and they'll say, listen, I can't accommodate your schedule. I'm not available during any of the times that you have available. Is there another time you can meet? And then I'll make the exception, right? I'll have the 4:30 call or whatever it needs to be. But setting that boundary quite literally on your calendar itself is a great way to prevent yourself from feeling like you have to take these calls or work on these projects in times that you're not free. So that's just a quick tip. If you don't want to work during those times, don't make yourself available. Don't make your calendar available to people during those times or those days. Another important point around time boundaries is related to vacation time. And again, I'm sure plenty of you live this experience. When I was a grad student and a professor, I never had a real vacation. Sure, I traveled. Sure, I went to see family, but I was always toting my laptop behind me. I always had internalized this idea that quote unquote vacation or holiday breaks they were time that you should spend catching up on your research or doing all the writing and the data analysis that you never got done during the semester. And I vividly remember being here in Maine before we moved here. We came up at Christmas time and my father-in-law looked at me sitting at the dining table with my laptop and said, and he wasn't being a jerk about this. He was truly worried about me. And he said, Paulina, you never go anywhere without your laptop and you never take time off. And it hit me. It hit me really hard because it was right. It was true. Vacations or holidays was just time to do more work, to catch up. And that was fueled by academia, by my co-author, who I love dearly. Has been a wonderful mentor to me, but that is the attitude that prevails in academia, that it's time to do research. And it's not healthy. It's not good, right? That is not the way that we should live our lives. Last year in 2025, I took over 9 weeks of vacation in my business. That's over 2 months of vacation. And during that time, I didn't do a single bit of work. We go for a cruise every winter to get out of the Maine cold, thankfully. I took 6 weeks off in the summer. I took 2 weeks off over the holidays. And that's in addition to days here and there where the kids were sick or whatever other things. I just needed a break, whatever it was. And I don't work when I'm on vacations now. Why does this matter? Well, you deserve it, right? You deserve to have vacations, to have holidays where you're not working. Your life should not be all about work. Your life is passing you by. When you are spending all your time working and thinking about work and feeling guilty for not working, that's not the way to live. You deserve to live a life of joy. The second reason to have real vacations where you don't work is because that rest helps you recharge. It's, I'll be honest, running a business can be hard. It can be stressful at times. You have a lot to do. When you get busy and you have more clients and you get active in your marketing, it's a lot. There's a lot to do. And it's thrilling and I love it, but I also really value that time away to rest my brain, to be fully present with my family and my children. And that time, taking that time to truly meaningfully recharge, is what allows you to come back feeling renewed and rejuvenated and ready to recommit to your business and your work. And if you want to have a sustainable, long-term, happy business and career, you have to take that time away to recharge. Let's look at the second type of boundary. This relates to your labor and scope creep. Many new editors and coaches that I work with in my program in BAE, many of them, if not most of them, feel a deep-seated need to give their clients, especially the first clients that they're working with, to give them every bit of knowledge and every ounce of energy that they have to pour. They feel like pouring themselves into these clients. And this is a problem because that feeling, that need, that belief that they have to do this comes from a place of fear. And it comes from a place of scarcity. It comes from their worry that if they don't prove themselves by over delivering and overworking, then everyone around them, their clients as well as their colleagues, will see that they're a fraud. And the people out there, their clients, will never hire them again. And if this sounds like the thoughts and feelings and the imposter syndrome that you've experienced, or that, it's something that you're worried about, if I start an editing business, if I start a coaching business, people are going to see I'm a fraud. You are not alone. Again, this is probably the most common fear that people have when they come into my program, when they start a new business. So that's normal, right? And again, all of this ties back to everything I talked about at the start of this episode. These ideas and these beliefs that we develop from our time in academia and everything that academia tells us about how we should live and how we should work. And so people feel when they're starting a new business, they feel like they have to over deliver to prove themselves so that if they don't over deliver, they're going to fail. Let me challenge that very strongly. No matter how good of an editor or coach that you are never going to solve all of your clients' problems. You are never going to make their paper perfect. And no matter how many hours you spend reading and rereading and coaching and planning and organizing and whatever it is you're doing in your business, no matter how many hours you spend trying to over deliver, you are never going to be perfect. And that's okay, right? One saying that we've been repeating in our house lately, and most of these that I share come from my husband, so credit to him for this, is I'm a human being, not a human doing. I'm a human being, not a human doing. And it sounds silly, but it's a really great reminder that we are human beings. We are people. We are not robots. We are not AI. We are not perfect. And it's unreasonable to expect yourself or anyone else to deliver a perfect service or product. And so the more that you try to over deliver, what I've seen among new editors is that the more you screw it up, the more that you try to be perfect, the worse you make it. The more overworked the text, the more over edited the text. There is such a thing as over editing. So just let go of this fear of not being enough. You are enough. You are skilled. You are talented. You are not perfect. You have things you need to learn, and you will do that. You will learn as you go, just like we all do. Accept that you are going to make mistakes. Accept that you aren't going to return a 100% perfectly edited paper. Not even editors who have been doing this for decades can do that. If you can aim to edit a paper to be a 90% paper, it's 90% perfect rather than 100% perfect, that's excellent. Your clients will be very satisfied with that and they will be grateful for your time and your work. So that's the first boundary in terms of our labor and scope creep is over delivering. Don't do it. Make it good enough, improve it, and you will be good enough. You are good enough, just as you are. The second subcategory in labor and scope creep is what I call these just one more thing requests. And you can consider this the scope creep part of this boundary. Most clients that I've dealt with are very respectful and very kind. The vast majority of people have always been respectful of my time and whatever we've agreed to in a contract. They don't try to take advantage of you. But you will, at some point, likely encounter people who want to take more than you've agreed to. This can look like a few different examples. Maybe the client asks you to do an extra editing pass on a paper, even if your contract says you only do one round of edits. Maybe you are on a coaching call with a client that's supposed to be just 60 minutes and you're getting closer and closer to say you want to spend the last 10 minutes wrapping up and planning for the next session, and the client just keeps asking questions and is not mindful of the time limit, and you start to feel like you have to spend more time on the call with them than you've committed to. Maybe the client sends you a set of formatting guidelines or submission requirements, and they have you edit the paper with those guidelines. And then after you return the edited text to them, they write you and say, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I sent you the wrong formatting requirements. Can you redo this?" This has happened to me before. And even though it's their fault and they made the mistake, they expect you to make the changes without paying you any extra for your time. Those are small but important examples of how we need to be conscious about holding boundaries related to our labor and scope creep. Okay. If you face anything like this, anything that causes you to get that feeling in your gut that says, this is not okay. I should be paid for this. This is not covered in the contract. Whatever it is, if you feel that little twinge of nervousness in your gut where you feel torn between saying no or charging more on the one hand and doing it anyway, even if you know it's wrong on the other hand, when this happens, I give you permission to say no. I give you permission to explain that you'd love to answer their extra questions during this call, but unfortunately you're out of time and it will have to wait till the next call. Or to say to them, you're so sorry that they sent the wrong formatting guidelines. You'd be happy to reformat the paper with the correct guidelines, but the charge will be however much it's going to cost. You are a human being, not a human doing. You do not live to serve other people. You provide a service in exchange for money. No one is entitled to your free labor. Let's go to the next point on this boundary setting related to our labor. One other example of, and again, happens very rarely, but it does happen and you should be prepared for it when it does, is facing clients who think that you should always be on call. Occasionally, I have had some people who contact me, say, on a Friday night. I get an email at 6 o'clock on a Friday night, and the client, even if it's an existing client, a new client, it doesn't matter. They ask me to edit a draft by Monday. Again, I don't work weekends because I have little kids and I need to spend time with them. I want to spend time with them. And this request from the client that you get on Friday night is not something that's pre-scheduled. You didn't agree with them ahead of time that you would work over the weekend. It's a last minute request because they were busy or they didn't get in touch sooner or whatever the reason is. Now, there's some room for judgment here, right? This is where we can talk about those exceptions to the rule again. In this situation, you have to judge, what are you willing to do? How much do you need the money? How much time is the project going to take? How much will working through the weekend ruin your plans? If you're happy to do it, then go for it. But if you feel that sensation in the pit of your stomach telling you that you really don't want to do this, that you've already overcommitted to family, that whatever is going on, just politely reply and say, I'm sorry, but I'm not available. Or if the request comes in after you're done working on Friday, don't reply at all until Monday. You are allowed to ignore emails, believe it or not. Now, just like my calendar tip from earlier, one thing that can help with this is to have a few editor or coach colleagues who you know and trust to use as referrals. And so if you get a request like this that comes in at any point and you can't take it, maybe you're going on vacation or whatever, you and your editor friends or coach friends share each other's information. And that way, if you're not available, you can pass the work to them. And maybe sometime they're not available, they pass work to you. So that's a way that we can all, as colleagues, help each other. And I think it can, particularly if you are uncomfortable with saying no to people, you can say, I'm so sorry, I'm not available, but here are some trusted colleagues that I think you would really enjoy working with. And that's it. I also have to thank my husband for this other quote here, which I'm going to share with you. In the case of these clients who want you to do this last minute work, here's another thing that we say that you can adopt if you like it. Lack of preparation or planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. So we always, again, from academia, we feel pressure to do last minute work like this to make other people happy. But the reality of the situation is that this person did not plan ahead. They should have planned ahead. They should have done the work. They should have contacted you sooner and made arrangements, and they didn't. And that's on them. It's not on you. And so, lack of preparation or planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. Let's go on to the last boundary. This is related to pricing. We have a couple examples here, and then we'll wrap up the episode. Another very common thing that I see with new editors and new coaches is the desire or the pull to undercharge. When you get an inquiry and you're excited, you're nervous, you're scared that if you quote them too much, your regular price, maybe you have a price that you've set that you know is what you typically charge for this kind of work, but you feel this pull to charge less because you're scared that fish is going to swim away, right? You've got a fish on the hook, or they're sniffing around the bait and they're thinking about biting, and you're scared they're going to swim away, so you think you're going to charge less to prevent that. That's normal. Everybody feels that in the beginning. And again, the problem with this is that energy is a nervous energy. It is an anxious energy. It is an energy that comes from a place of scarcity, of fear. And when you possess that energy, your clients can feel it, right? It's like going on a first date and feeling nervous that they're not going to like you, or feeling desperate that you really want this to work out this time. The people around you can feel that energy. And when you bring that nervous, anxious energy to your business, it doesn't pay off for you. I will also say, and I've mentioned this in other episodes, that it's sort of counterintuitive, where we think that by charging less, more people will hire us, and that's not true. Okay. Are there people out there who want to pay less? Absolutely, but they are not necessarily the clients you want to work with. And so high quality clients aren't looking for the editor or the coach who charges the least. They're looking for the person who's the right fit for them. And so charging less does not make quality clients want to hire you. So let go of that nervous energy. Go with the prices that you have set that are reasonable. Work with a coach like me to help you set those prices, to know what's fair for you and the clients. And hold that boundary on pricing. Don't be scared. If they swim away, they swim away. There's plenty of fish in the sea. The last point I'll make on boundaries, and specifically with pricing, is if it requires extra time, charge for it. And so we come back to this point that I made earlier, where let's say that your contract says you only do one round of edits, that this project you are contracting with the client for includes one round of edits and that's it. Sometimes clients will want to review the changes you've made. They make additional changes to the text and they want to send it back to you for you to take another look. That is when I tell them I charge my proofreading rate. And so for editing, I might charge 8 cents a word for the original copy edit, which is one round of editing. If they make changes to the text and want me to look over it, I then charge my proofreading rate, which is maybe 3 or 4 cents a word, depending on how much work it's gonna take, and if it involves any new formatting or anything like that. And so you charge your lower proofreading rate to review text that you've already edited that the client has worked with again. And that's okay, right? Because your time and your labor are valuable, your knowledge and your skills are valuable, and you deserve to be paid for the work that you do. All right. So we've talked about where this discomfort comes from academia, the patterns and the behaviors and the beliefs that we've learned from our time in academia. We've talked about how those beliefs and those patterns shape how we run our business, why we feel pulled to violate our boundaries, to not hold our boundaries, and what kinds of boundaries we should be holding in our business. When is it okay to hold a boundary, and how can we do that? So, as we wrap up here, I want to emphasize again a couple of important points for you to think about going forward. And if you're somebody who likes to journal, you want to journal on some of this stuff. When you feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach, right, that we've talked about, when you feel that discomfort around holding these boundaries, when you feel that fear coming up for you, just pause, right? You don't have to reply to everybody's email right away. Take 12 hours, take 24 hours. Reach out to your community, reach out to your business coach. Tell them how you're feeling. Somebody contacted me and wants me to do an extra pass on their paper, but really I should charge for that. What do I do? And that is the beauty of having a community of academic entrepreneurs, of colleagues, of having a business coach to help you through this stuff, is to reassure you. But take a pause. Notice that those feelings of resistance, those feelings of discomfort, that is information, right? Get curious about what you're feeling. Think about, where is this coming from? Why am I scared to charge my regular rates with this person? Why do I feel like I have to sit on this call that is supposed to be 60 minutes and it's inching longer and longer and longer? Why do I feel scared to say, I'd love to answer that question, but we're out of time? What is this about? Where is it coming from? Think about it. Work through it. Remember what we've talked about today, that your self-worth does not come from the amount of time you spend working. It comes from the fact that you are a human being, not a human doing, that you are worthy of being paid well for your extensive skills and extensive experience. You deserve to be paid. The only person you owe anything to is yourself and your family. You don't owe other people, clients, anything more than you've promised them in your contract. If they are wanting you to over deliver and to go above and beyond, you don't owe that to them. The second point that I want to highlight is, again, this tendency to operate or to act out of fear or scarcity. If you feel like you are telling yourself that you have to take this job or client, because if you don't, they won't hire you again, that's a red flag. If you feel like you have to do this last minute work for this client because then you'll get a bad reputation if you don't, that's a red flag. Notice it. Notice those feelings. If you, let's say that we go back to the example of somebody contacts you last minute on a Friday night and needs the paper back on Monday. If you want to take the job because, let's say, your camping trip for the weekend got canceled because the weather is bad and you have nothing else to do, and you want to take the project and you're looking forward to it, then go for it. Even if you don't normally work on weekends, go for it. But every decision that you make, everything that you do, should come from a place of excitement and joy and not fear or scarcity. And then finally, in your communication with clients about these issues, remember, you don't owe anyone an apology or a long explanation. I'm sorry to the guys out there who are good guys, but I have to say, if you feel tempted to over explain or apologize, channel your inner mediocre white man. Would they apologize profusely for not being able to do something they never promised to do to begin with? No, they wouldn't. Right? Just say, I'm sorry, I'm not available, and leave it at that. You do not owe anyone an explanation for anything, especially if you have never agreed to do the work to begin with. Why do you deserve to set and hold boundaries? Why is this something that you should prioritize in your life? You deserve to live a life that you love. You deserve to live your life for you and not for other people. Let go of the beliefs that we've adopted for so long being in academia, telling us that we serve a greater purpose, that we should sacrifice ourselves because it's virtuous, because we need to take care of the next generation or whatever. Let it go. It's not true, right? Your life should be lived for you, not for anyone else. And the last point I will make is, as I said earlier, boundaries are what is going to keep your business sustainable. There are going to be times when work gets busy, when the clients are pouring in, when you accidentally overbook yourself and commit to more work than you have time to do. That's normal. We all learn from this. We all go through this, and we have to figure out what's realistic and what's not. And life just happens. And once you go through those busy periods, you deserve to take time to rest and recharge. You cannot run a business long term if you do not work at a pace that's sustainable and that serves you and your life. If you get into this habit, if you maintain these habits of overworking and trying to over deliver and stressing yourself out, you will just end up resenting the business and being miserable. And what is the point of starting a business if you're not going to run it in a way that serves you and your life? If you found this episode helpful, let me know in the comments on YouTube. Leave a review on your podcast app. I love to hear from you. Send me an email or a DM on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you. Let me know what you think. Let me know about any other questions you have, things you'd like me to address in a new podcast episode. And until then, I'll see you next week. If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.